I would say there's work to be done. Yeah. It's going to be the quote of this podcast. Yeah. But there's a lot of beautiful work being done too, and a lot that can inspire others.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to You Create's podcast, Many Different Birds, broadcasting on CJSW Radio, where we will hear authentic stories from special guests from all backgrounds and bridge the gap between non-Indigenous and Indigenous communities, with a special focus on the Canadian healthcare system. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bear Spa, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3.
We want to open up the floor to honest discussions and get a deeper insight into how we can improve our healthcare practices and work on our biases. Today, we have a special guest, Aubrey-Anne Laliberte-Pewapisconias, who is a nêhiyâskwew from Canoe Lake Cree First Nation and Little Pine First Nation. She is currently pursuing her studies in her home territory in the Master of Sustainability in Energy Security program at the University of Saskatchewan.
Aubrey is an Indigenous youth activist and environmentalist following her ancestral teachings of protecting Mother Earth for our future generations. Her work extends to many different organizations, but one to note is her role as one of the 5 Canadian youth attending the Y20 Summit in India this year to take part in negotiations. Woo!
Yay! Thank you so much for joining us today, Aubrey. And before we start, is there anything you would like to add, or we missed anything while introducing you?
I think I just want to say you pronounced my name perfectly. That's good. Yeah.
I was like, I do not want to mess it up.
No, you honestly did so good, which is great. Sometimes people don't ask and then they'll just go off and it'll be completely not recognizable.
I think pronouncing your name and being able to say it properly and it's an identity, right?
So oh yeah, 100%.
It's important.
And I take a lot of pride in my last name. I know where I get it from. My Pewapisconias is from my mushroom Gerald, who was a huge part of my life, and probably where I really got to feel my connection with the land as an Indigenous person, just because, he was really connected with horses and his ranch and being out there on the land in Little Pine First Nation. And so I love that. And then the Liberty is my grandpa on my mom's side, and I love him to pieces. And he's a residential school survivor and has done so much to, be a good person in our family to look up to and continue pushing us forward and making sure we're motivated as a family. And so I take a lot of pride in that. So I love it when people pronounce it correctly.
Well, that's good, because I've noticed sometimes a lot of people let's say when they have ethnic names or longer names, if someone kind of doesn't pronounce it right, they just kind of give up and they're whatever.
Yeah.
And which is you're not giving justice to your own name. You should tell them, no, my name is this, because people, if other people can correct you, then you should also correct your name when it's mispronounced.
Yeah. And it's a way of decolonizing the way that we have conversations with one another, and that's so important, and we don't push that enough. I find sometimes it's we just let people feel uncomfortable trying to say our names, but I think we should allow that space for people to get uncomfortable, because that's what's really going to make them learn. That's what's going to make them put in the effort to actually try to not do that again, or not feel embarrassed when they're saying something, and just be respectful in general. You can't build a relationship if someone's not even trying to do that simple bare minimum.
Very true. Mm-hmm. Very true. It just goes to show, you could just say, how do you pronounce your name?
Yeah.
Right?
Or the phonetics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are things that I do not get asked enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know there's a Y20 event that's coming in, but before that, I would like to let the listeners know Youth 20, in short, is Y20 Summit, is an annual event that brings together young leaders from around the world to discuss and provide recommendations on issues related to the G20 agenda. So that includes topics like economic growth, international trade, and climate change. So the Y20 summit is typically held prior to the G20 summit, if that's correct.
Yeah, we have a pre-summit, and then we have the Y20. It happens it happens a bit before, so then we can bring it to the G20 leaders.
Yeah, so the G20 summit is like the meeting of the leaders of the largest economies. The Y20 summit provides an opportunity for young leaders to engage with policymakers and make their voices heard on issues that affect them and their communities. So, Aubrey, I know you're getting into this. It's like slowly happening. How did you get to this particular summit, or like how did this opportunity arise?
Yeah, so there's 5 tracks at the Y20 summit this year. And so mine is on climate change and disaster risk reduction. It's called Making Sustainability a Way of Life. And so for me, I really only got into like the advocacy for climate change and sustainability space in 2020 when I got involved with Indigenous Clean Energy. And with that organization, like it's all across Canada. It's a deadly group of people, honestly. Like we're all trying to work towards like this goal of transitioning Indigenous communities. And so when I got into that space, I was like, oh my goodness, like why was I not focused on this like way earlier in my life? Because the way I connect to the land is so important to who I am, just as a person who needs to, to connect to my mental health, but also just as like a First Nations Cree woman. It's crucial. Like it's a whole part of who I am. It's my prayer. It's like my Mother Earth. And so I really got into that space and I felt so passionate about it. And I wanted to find myself in more spaces where I could like amplify that, because in that space, Indigenous peoples aren't heard from enough. And we're the stewards of the land. We protect 80% of the world's biodiversity, like Indigenous peoples across the world. And so I wanted to like really get into more spaces where I could amplify that. And so when the opportunity arose, I went to COP27 this year and I met so many amazing people. And I think that's where I got to, kind of like an international advocacy space. And I was like seeing how much people across the world were doing to try to, combat climate change together. And so then I saw this posting from Young Diplomats of Canada. And so YDC was recruiting, and I saw that one of the tracks were for climate change. And then I looked more into it, and I saw that we would have the potential to create real change and real recommendations that we could bring to these leaders, who are leaders that, they contribute a lot to climate change. And then that then impacts the countries that aren't part of the G22. So how we can kind of bring the attention to that. So I applied, and thankfully YDC selected me. Yeah. And so I'm going to be heading to the pre-summit at the end of April. And then I'll head back again in August for the actual summit. But before that, like a lot more work goes into it with consultations with Canadian youth, especially Indigenous youth. I'm trying to put a focus on when it comes to climate change. And so there's a lot that's going to go into it prior to those summits, but it's a cool opportunity. And yeah, hopefully change will come of it.
Change will come out of it. And it's in India for all the listeners who want to know. So are you excited to go to India?
I am so excited to go to India. I think like that's always been a place that I've wanted to go. I have so many friends who like go there still to visit family, and they'll tell me about like how beautiful it is and like how amazing it is. And so I'm so excited to get to kind of see it. And also like for me, when I go to different countries, I want to go and like I want to understand like who they are and what they believe and like the beauty in their culture and what they do. Because I feel like people will go and just sightsee and then like not really learn the roots. So that's what I'm most excited about, is really just to learn and kind of get that grounding there. And I'm so pumped. I know it's going to be warm in August, but I don't care.
Very hot. Yeah. I know you said that you started you got into, it was Indigenous, what was it? Indigenous energy?
Indigenous clean energy.
Indigenous clean energy. You got into in 2020.
Yeah.
What got you there?
Yeah, so I was in Ottawa in 2019 in October for the Canoe National Conference. And so I was there speaking on the youth panel. And there was a night that us as a youth panel, we were all sitting around. We had finished our panel and we kind of just wanted to like debrief. Like those spaces can be so heavy when you're like sharing your experiences, and a lot of time that comes with sharing your traumas sometimes. And so we just wanted to like debrief, and we had got this message from this girl, Jordan Burnoff, who I'm still friends with to this day. And she messaged us to go to the Indigenous Clean Energy Gathering. So it was their conference that they also have that was happening at the same time in the same city. Like it just kind of perfectly aligned. And so we went to the gathering, and we met clean energy leaders from across Canada. We met people who are making real changes, who are completely transitioning their communities to clean energy. And it was so amazing. Like it was just inspiring and uplifting, and you were having fun and you were laughing and we were dancing, and there's throat singers and powwow dancers and jiggers. It was beautiful. Yeah. I like walked into the space and I was like, oh, I never want to leave this space. And I'm still thankful for Indigenous Clean Energy for like making me find my passion. And so since then, I followed their page, and then they had a job posting for an internship, and I applied and I got in.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for them. Yeah.
Everything aligns. And I know you said you were at the Canoe Economic Development Summit.
Yeah.
I actually went to the summit in August 2022. It was at Grey Eagle, and it was such a fun time. I had a lot of fun. I talked to so many people, and I really liked, at the end, we had to present like kind of like a case.
Yeah.
And so it was really fun talking with my group. And I remember my group was the one who wanted to have a funeral home.
Oh, right.
Yes.
I do remember that.
Yeah. So my group, because in my group, there was an individual, she worked at a funeral home on a reserve. And she said that like the way that like practices on a reserve versus like when you're not on a reserve, they're so different. And she's like, we need to have more funeral homes that are tailored to Indigenous people. She's like, they have like, you know, you have your own practices of how you want to say goodbye to anyone, the way you want to like, you know, do things. And I remember when she brought that up, and I was like, wow, like that's true. Like even with death and life, like there's different practices to honor death too. Right. So I remember when she brought that up, and it was just a cool idea. It was really fun working with everyone and just connecting with everyone, and everyone in my group. I was the only one from Calgary, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was nice talking to people who were, I think, I'm not too sure, but I do remember there was a couple people from like Northwest Territories.
Oh, nice.
And you don't really meet people in Alberta or anywhere who are from the Northwest, who are from Nunavut or like Yellowknife, or, you know, like it's just nice to like talk to someone who's from like a kind of like a province that you personally, I don't know if I would ever like go up north, you know? Yeah. So it's like nice to like actually run into someone who's up north and like talk to them and see, you know, how things are so different there. And yeah, I really had a good time at the summit.
Yeah. No, Canoe's amazing. Like they try, like I love Canoe. Like I cannot say enough good things about them. I sat on their board for a couple years as the national student director, and just being there, you can see like how they try to connect youth from like coast to coast to coast to like make sure that they develop understanding of what we're all facing. Cause like we talked about before this podcast even, is there's so much diversity in Indigenous cultures and even beyond. And so it's nice because it bridges that gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth to kind of learn how we can come together for economic development opportunities. And yeah, it's a cool event. I love them. They do wonderful work. I love Canoe. If people aren't following them, they should.
Yeah. My favorite part was when we got to go on the reserve. And we were like on that little truck thing, and I was sitting right at the back, and my legs were like swinging out, and it was just such a nice, like, I don't know, the weather was so good, connecting with people. And I remember we played this one game. It was with sticks.
Yes.
And that was really fun. We saw some bison out in the distance. Like it was just like, I would never go so deep into a reserve where there's nothing there. It was just land.
Yeah.
So it was just so nice to like actually be somewhere in Alberta that I would never actually go, you know? But I got the opportunity to go and see something new. So really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And Tsuut'ina is like a beautiful, beautiful, like a beautiful people, beautiful space to be in. And so, no, I think that was a great experience for everyone who attended that event.
Yeah. I remember you were speaking on the first day.
I did. Yeah. Me and Nathan Crow, who's one of my best friends, we opened it up with a youth empowerment session, and it was so fun. Like him and I had never spoken together, but we've been friends. So we were like, this is going to be cool. And we had a good time with it. And I hope we brought together that spirit of empowerment, you know, like, because those spaces are tough. Like, there is a lot of depth in what we discuss, and, you know, even in economic development, looking at like the discrimination you face in those projects, and how like sometimes they're imbalanced even. So like, we wanted to start off the week with people, you know, knowing why we were there and getting grounded in that, and, you know, so they could carry with them for the rest of the week. And it was so fun. It was so cool. I hope people enjoyed it.
I did. Good. I did. Yeah.
Well, if someone is actually passionate about these issues related to climate change or wellness or anything, how would we partake in these kind of like summits? You know?
Yeah.
How would we?
There's like so much opportunity that I think sometimes gets missed, and it's so sad. There should almost be someone who like runs an Indigenous, like an organization that is just connecting opportunities for youth to apply to, because I'll find that there's like summits that will be hosted, or conferences that will be hosted, or even events like where people can go speak on a podcast or go in a talking circle or anything like that, and they don't have the reach, you know, to get out to as many people as they need to get out to. And so for me, like, what it came down to was just, I literally Googled, or I followed as many Instagram pages as I could. And I was like, eventually someone's going to share something, or they're going to post something, and I'm going to see that. And I think like social media is like a really great tool for that, because that's where honestly my jobs that I've applied for, or the opportunities I've applied for, I would honestly say like 90% of them I found through Instagram stories.
Like your main platform of networking.
For real. Like, people just share them. And people think I'm going to say LinkedIn, and I don't. I'm like, it was Instagram for sure. Because I think that's how we like engage youth, you know, like that's where I am most of the time. That's where my kin are usually, like my friends that I'm talking to. So like, I don't know, I just scroll, or I follow the right pages that like, if they're aligning with my values and my passions, especially in climate change, like I'd follow like Indigenous climate action and Indigenous clean energy, and making sure that I'm like staying up to date with what they're posting in their newsletters. And from there, just honestly, just applying for whatever I could. Because honestly, what is meant to be will be. And if you apply, you're meant to be in it, you'll get into it.
Right. And I think it can be quite surprising how many people actually share the same passions and values that you have, and you don't realize it until you get into these like different circles and you go in projects. And actually this summer I'm going to be going on a water conservation project, so I applied to Ocean Bridge Classic, and I'm super excited.
Yay!
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's amazing too. And like, honestly, like, people need to put their efforts in our waters too. Like, I just bought a children's book. I know it sounds a little silly, but
I mean, there's something
we
there.
love it. You gotta learn something. Yeah. And it's like an Indigenous children's book, and it's called "We Are Water Protectors." And I was like, I love that. Like, when I have kids, I want to show them that book. So it's like, but not enough people are focusing on like our waters and how important they are just to our life, to ceremony, to connecting us to our health, like all of that. So that is amazing. Congrats. I want to hear about that. When you're back, tell me.
I'll definitely keep you updated.
Okay.
I think, and I did the same thing. I Googled like, you know, what kind of water conservation efforts are we doing in Alberta? And then I ran across this opportunity, and same thing that you did with the summits.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, just Googling. It's like the easy. It's easy,
Yeah. I was going to ask you, when you went to G20? Or sorry, COP27.
Yes, COP27, yeah.
Yeah. So when you went on this, when you went to the summit, did you find that a lot of people that were there, did you find that their kind of agendas or what they were looking for were kind of similar to what you were trying to look for? Because did you go as a Canadian representative?
Kind of. So, that's a good question, because it was a bit of both, honestly, which it's amazing and it's frustrating. So I went with the Indigenous Clean Energy delegation. I love them, still involved with ICE to this day, went through their youth programming and everything. And so I went with ICE. And so, we did come when people talked to us, like they tried to get the Canadian perspective, or what's currently called Canada perspective. And so we did share a lot on that. And I spent a lot of my time in like the Indigenous people's space. So I spent a lot of time there. And what I found is that, when I was connecting with like Indigenous people from around the world, like the 7 regions that the UN recognizes as having Indigenous groups, we were all like so similar in the way we looked at the world, and we looked at our waters, and we looked at our like living relatives. Like you'll even notice, like for me, like I'm Cree, like we'll like pick up a rock and like that's a life, like that's like a grandfather to us, you know, like that's a living spirit, like that's a being to us, and that we stay connected with. So when we talk about the land, it's in such like a deep way, and it's so meaningful to us, and all of that is part of like our ceremony too. And I found that was like so similar with other cultures across the world. So it was really cool. Like we were all really trying to get to the same purpose. We were all facing different kinds of climate disasters depending on where we were. But all of us at the end of the day were fighting to protect Mother Earth. We were trying to make sure that our Indigenous knowledges and traditions were being heard and upheld. Like that was the end goal in those spaces. And we all had similar ideals to that I wish more leaders would listen to, because I really do think that's where our solutions lie. But then at the same time, I would bump into people who were there and they were in the oil and gas space, for example, and trying to show that was sustainable. But in my opinion, everyone's very different, but it's not our way out. It's not how we're going to get to where we need to be. It's not how we're going to protect our future generations. And we need to stop looking at wealth as like this monetary value. It needs to be wealth of the land and wealth of our youth and what they're going to look forward to, and know that they were loved by their ancestors. So we have a responsibility to be good ancestors. So at COP, you did find phenomenal, amazing people that could inspire you forever. But then you also, you can get dragged down. It's a hard space. You're talking about the world ending, and we're talking about like heavy topics where we're being displaced from our lands because of climate disasters. And it's disheartening, or we're facing health issues as a result of, being near these spaces that are contaminating our waters or our food or our animals. And so it was a bit of both, it's so weird. You're in this middle space of feeling like uplifted and empowered and like by people that share the same values as you, but you're also seeing the people lobbying against that almost and trying to, deter the progress that we could make.
To all the listeners, COP was in Egypt.
Yes.
Yeah. So my question is, what was your biggest takeaway? Like, did you ever get a chance to kind of reflect on the people you spoke to, someone who inspired you, someone who said something that really stuck with you, like anything? What was it could be one reflection, it could be a couple, but what did you take away?
I think for me, like I was inspired by so many people at that event. Like there's no shortage of people that I like walked away as, and like people who like were my friends going to COP. I watched them advocate on an international stage, and they inspired me. And then they're still back here with me, and we're still fighting that fight. But for me, like one person that I still stay in touch with, it's a woman named Cressida, and she's an Indigenous women's activist in Papua New Guinea. And Cressida is phenomenal. She spoke on a panel, and I was listening to her speak, and everything she said was about, we look at the earth and we call it Mother Earth, like for us, it's like, it's our protector, it's our mother. We need to, be interconnected and reciprocal in that relationship. But she talks about it, and she's like, this is like, a woman to us in a lot of ways, but we're not valuing our women in this space. Like in the climate space, there's still a lot of work to be done even there when it comes to listening to Indigenous women's voices and women's voices as a whole, and their contributions. And she really pushed that forward about how like our women are affected disproportionately in this area. And then when we come to these tables, we're not listened to at the same pace we need to. And she was really advocating like that, that's also our way out. We need to listen to our youth, and we need to listen to our women. And we're not doing that enough. And so for her to go on a stage and say that and really hold that, and she still does that like back home. I keep in touch with her to this day. She's like an auntie to me, like an honorary auntie to me. And I just love her. She's amazing. And I wish more people would follow her work, and I know she does beautiful work, and she has so much love to share. And I think she is like a walking example of like why our women need to be at the forefront. Like our women and our youth need to be up there, because she's saying these things, but she's also doing the action on the ground and taking care of our communities at the end of the day. Like she does everything from like from a selfless perspective, and I think that's beautiful.
I know you're talking about businesses and Mother Earth, like the gap there. Do you think maybe these energy companies value Mother Earth, or is it like a point of like exploitation for business and capital gain?
It's tough because I do believe, I do operations. I'm an operations consultant with a place called Tatonga Inc. and they're based out of Calgary. And Alec Carton is the owner of Tatonga. And at Tatonga, we've worked with a lot of clients that are in the energy space that do want to do meaningful work. Like they do want to work with Indigenous peoples in a way that's going to, advance our communities, our youth, our nations, hear from Indigenous perspectives and make sure that they're not just like taking it into consideration, they're being led by those values. And so in a lot of ways, like in that area, I've seen so much great work being done and really great people. Like at places like Pembina. Pembina's done a lot of great work. And Energy Futures Lab, they're really, pushing that forward. But at the same time, there's a lot of people out there that aren't doing that. And it is disappointing because because we're in this space and because it's such like a topic that everyone's talking about right now, people are finding a way to almost like twist the words that we say in this climate space. Like they're saying like, oh, you want to help your communities? You can help your communities by getting involved in these projects that have fossil fuels, But it's true. Like we do want to help our communities and we do want to help them push forward. But like we want to do it in a way that also incorporates our traditional values and we can never let that go. And if we're truly looking at that 7 generations principle of like making sure our next 7 generations are going to, be able to live the same way we do, if not better, then we need to be paying attention to what we're doing as people right now. And it's tough because there's even people like in the Indigenous community that are pushing that agenda, because it is true. It can create jobs, but so can clean energy, sharing our knowledge can create jobs as well. Making space for Indigenous peoples to push, what we know and what we've learned for generations and through our oral storytelling needs to be taken into consideration as well. And those can be jobs, and those can be roles to play in those projects. And we don't do that enough, but there's definitely people who, are pushing against it or, using it in the wrong way. And it's disheartening and it's frustrating, but I haven't seen a youth do that. So I think that's why it just shows even more like why we need our youth to be speaking, our youth to be sharing those things. Cause like we'll call that out right away. And I think that's so cool. Like there's a lady named Serena. She's the co-chair of the 7 Gen Youth Council, which is like a clean energy youth council across Canada, what's currently called Canada. And Serena's awesome. Like I was with her at Globe Exchange not long ago, and just hearing how she spoke about like her traditional stories and how she knew people who were pushing forward the wrong agenda or doing things for the wrong reason or just trying to do things, to look at the monetary perspective of things. She was like so open about calling that out and making sure that that was heard and that was well known and that the youth needed to be heard in those spaces. And I think that was so beautiful. It just showed that like our youth really are the ones pushing this change forward and we need to value that more.
I know you interact a lot, like internationally, like you've been into a lot of different summits and you've heard like international perspectives on like energy sources, climate change. Where do you think like Canada stands? Do you think we've improved over the last 20 years or do you think we're kind of behind other nations?
I think we are a country that prides themselves on how far they've come when sadly we could be doing a lot more. We have the potential as like a country that's doing what we do with the resources that we have, with the talent that we have the potential to be doing so much more. Like we could be leaders in these spaces, we could lead that transition, that shift, and we're not doing it because we're valuing different things in this country. And it's disappointing. And we also have so much work to do when it comes to bridging the gap of Indigenous and non-Indigenous projects coming together, and bringing people together even just. And so I think we are really good sometimes at talking the talk, and a lot of other countries look at us like we're progressive and we're safe and there's nothing going wrong here. Like we're this nice country to a lot of other places. But in reality, we have tons of work to do. Like that's not the reality at all. Like you should see how like my people in community are treated, how the things that I faced as an Indigenous person growing up in the urban city, like what I faced just from people, like, not having just basic education on that stuff, what that can do and like the disconnect that can create. And so there's so much work to be done, but on an international stage, I think people think we are sometimes like this nice, progressive country, but there's so much more to be done, and a lot that we don't show that we need to bring to the surface, and that comes with amplifying the right voices.
Right. And I think you've already mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, do you think that Canadian youth need to partake in these summits and conferences and advocate for these issues?
Absolutely. And I think that the issue isn't that Canadian youth aren't willing to do that. The issue is that the people who are in the positions that they can make space for youth aren't doing that. They're not doing their role. They're not doing their job in making sure that we have a space and we have a voice. It's one thing to, some people don't have us there at all. Some people will set aside seats just for youth to attend. But there's people who actually put in an effort that have us on the panels, have us educating people in industry about what we need to see. And that's where we're going to make the change. And then from there, when we're on those panels or we're in those spaces and we're in those negotiations, that's where we get added to projects. That's where we get added to strategy making. And that's where change actually comes from. We can't be this tokenized part of it anymore where they just make sure youth are there. They have to actually incorporate that in their actions in every step of the way. And if they're not doing that, you're not going to have any strategies.
I do appreciate though, I've seen over the years, there are more youth opportunities. Mm-hmm. Just on the regular basis, like you said, when you're scrolling on Instagram, back in the day, I wouldn't see as many opportunities pop up, just casually just scrolling. But now I do. A lot of people are putting youth on boards and councils. There's a lot of a MP will have a council of youth. And I think the best reach, to be honest, I think is youth, because I feel as we're going up, we're attuned to looking at issues and questioning things. I feel older adults and stuff, they've just stopped questioning why things are the way they are. But I see youth are very but why? Mm-hmm. They ask the why, which is I think is needed, because that challenges notions and stuff. So I do appreciate that youth are getting more involved, but I do know there's a lot more to be done.
There's always more to be done. But it's tiring to think all the time about what can be done. But there is a lot. I know the Environment and Climate Change Canada has a youth council now, and there's a super amazing, powerful woman named Sunshine who sits on that youth council. And that's just a prime example of, there are youth in those spaces, and they are being put in areas where they can influence that. But it's also making sure that those councils aren't, just councils to exist. They're councils that are actually going to be, have power to have a say in what gets decided on in Canada. And I guess we'll see. That'll take time to see. Yeah.
Actually, you were talking about 7th generation or something, because this just popped in my head, because in Hinduism, that 7 is very important, because after you there's a thing where you go if you're friends for 7 years or something, it's a lifetime thing. It's just very symbolic. I just was wondering, I was curious, what does 7th generation mean? Or is there a specific symbolism to number 7 in your...
Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. That's why people from different backgrounds have to connect, because there's so much beauty you can find in the connection of what we believe in. And my dad always taught me that growing up. He was you got to talk to people. He was because that's, you find real beauty and real connection across the world, with our different, our world views. And so, 7 Gen is a youth council, but their name is based off of the 7 generations principle. And so the 7 generations principle is something that a lot of Indigenous people will look at. And it's that, the way that what we do today needs to positively impact our youth and our next generations, 7 generations ahead. And sometimes they'll even take that a step further and think we have to look at the 7 generations before us and how they protected us and they loved us and the cultures and the traditions that they upheld so that we can keep that culture moving forward. And so it's in a lot of ways, 7 is really important to us because we're always looking ahead, 7 generations ahead. And if you look at that on a family tree, it feels like it's so long away. And I think that that's important because you have to feel that connection to your kin. And maybe that's when we'll really see the importance of this, really see the impact of our decisions today. Because if we look at that 7 generations thing too, it is making sure that they can live the way we live today. But I also like to think that it's not living like this because we're not in the space where this is sustainable either. We need to have more energy efficiency. We need to be looking at how we interact with the world, how we interact with other people, our openness to others. And that's thinking, we still got to change. And so that's also why looking ahead is different because, we want of course, our next generations, our kin, to live better even than we're living today, and make sure that they have a world that they're proud of and they feel connected and they feel important in. And so, yeah, that seven is important. And I like that. I want to learn more about that. Yeah.
Yes. The 7 is like cool because like personally, I can only look 2 generations ahead. Me thinking about 7 generations ahead, like I don't even know what that would look like or what year in the world we would be in, or actually even like 7 generations before me.
Yeah.
Like being able to even talk to my grandparents about like their generations before them, like do they even have the knowledge to be like, this is the way that they lived, this is like, you know. So I think another part of it, storytelling, because I feel like a lot of people have stopped sharing like stories and perspectives, and I think that's what you said, like we're here and we learned about the number 7, right? And it's just through oral and talking, and just like, and if we don't talk, then how will we ever learn?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. We have to have more space for those spaces where it's solely focused on like our oral traditions of passing on knowledge. Because honestly, that's where you make the best knowledge. I wouldn't have connected with any of you had it been us like reading a book in a room together. You know?
Okay, literally, because on our intro video, we were talking about how classroom settings is so different from actually talking, because everything is in the textbook and everything is like facts, and it's not like your experiences, storytelling, firsthand. I don't know how to say it, but like you get a deeper connection when you're talking more than just reading text.
Yeah.
But like, isn't like a lived experience also a fact?
Yeah.
Right?
I guess.
Yeah, but like we like to say fact as in something that is research, something that we can visibly see. Like in scientific research, results are observable.
It's like tangible versus intangible.
And they're quantifiable.
Results, right? But like results can be just us talking, be like 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 7%.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's like a way that we can like decolonize the way we look at like the world and learning and traditions, because there's so, in my opinion, more power in that, like way more. Like I derive the most when I can like connect with individuals like you in person, like when we're talking. Or you see even like now, like our generations are listening to podcasts and they're like audiobooks, you know, like I enjoy that. Like, and I think that's because like there is storytelling like deep rooted in like our ancestry and our DNA that we're just, you know, we're not playing into, you know, we're not attuned to anymore. And it's like, it's beautiful. That's how you make relationships that mean something. And like, I was talking to someone and like someone asked me about like some of the calls to action, like the Truth and Reconciliation's Commission's calls to action. And someone was like, well, like, what does this mean? Like, what does this look like? Because they read it and they were like, well, what does that mean? Like, how do I do that? And so then I came at it with like the perspective of experiences and like lived experiences that we have as Indigenous peoples connected to like that call. And that was when that person was like, wow, now I see why that's so important. Because at first they just didn't get it until they could connect a face or a human experience to that, or a story. And that's, I think, like when we're really called like internally to do something is when we can connect that to somebody. And that's where we like get our empathy, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I've actually read the calls to action.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, last year I took a course and I like read it and I had to kind of like reflect on it, and I had to essentially make like a reconciliation framework. And so I chose education, and I chose education in all sectors, because education, when you think about it, you think about schools, but I think it's not just limited to schools.
No.
Right? So like I had to write like a 25-page paper. But it was really nice because I could actually like reflect on something properly, and not just like, you know, when you have a 2-page limit, you kind of have to summarize. But here I could actually like dive in deep, and like I discovered more issues in my own reflection of reading articles, reading papers. I had to watch a lot of videos, and it was just like nice doing that reflection on my own, because I don't think I've ever done that, period.
Yeah,
because no one's ever given me the space to do that, or in most cases it is because of school, right? And no one's ever given me that opportunity to do that reflection.
Okay, but talking about school, I feel like we're so in the idea of, oh, let's just get the assignments done, whatever, and not think about what we're actually doing, and take a step back and be like, so what did I actually learn?
Yeah.
And how can I apply this to what I'm interested in? How can I take it from the classroom to the real world and be like, okay, there's this issue now, how do I solve it?
We're so in that like circle of life of just like, oh, sleep, eat, school, get up, do same thing over and over, and we don't stop and be like, just take a moment and be like,
it's
why?
Sad.
I know
it is. It's disappointing.
Thing is, I do it too, and I know that.
Yeah,
I know that, but I'm just like, I'm so used to it.
Me too.
It's so hard to break the cycle.
It is. There's like, it's a world we live in. Like, even if you do want to break that, like the way the world works is based on that system of these deadlines and the structure and what you do day to day. But a really cool thing that with people that are interested in, you know, kind of trying to work around that mindset is Future Ancestors is an organization in what's currently called Canada, and they have something called the decolonization of time. It's on their website, and it talks about how we can decolonize the way we look at time. And even having done work with their organization, they talk to you about it right away when you're clients, and they'll talk about how, you know, they do it based on their capacity, not based on these deadlines and these times in like the Western world. They'll do it in a different way based on like what's good for their health and their bodies and their family time and what they need in the world. And I think that is beautiful. And if everyone could adopt that, I think we would get out of that rhythm of doing things just to do them and not doing things to actually learn from them and like reflect on them. And like, that's like lived experiences is another like whole other discussion that there's just not enough time, but sadly, but lived experiences too. Like, I was just in a class about reconciliation in my master's, and I was doing it. And like, at one point I was like, I've known this my whole life. Like, it's beautiful for me to get to be in that class, of course, and like get to talk to other students who don't know about it and share my lived experiences. But sometimes I'm like, why am I working towards a credit for something that like is like what I've known since I was a kid? Like, I've experienced racism since I was a little kid. I've always seen it. I've seen my parents endure it. I've seen my grandparents. Like, I have survivors in my family from residential schools and day schools. And it's like, for me, I was like, why am I getting graded on writing about my trauma? You know, why aren't my lived experiences just considered for a credit? Like, and it's sad that I even have to look at it as like a credit. And another way, yet we need to decolonize in academia even. But yeah, it's just interesting, like, to really take into those lived experiences and like what that means, and like how we're sometimes getting Indigenous people to like relive that trauma a lot of times through those courses too.
Yeah, I know you said that you were doing your master's of sustainability and energy security. What does it mean by energy security? Because I can piece the two words together, but from what you've learned through your courses, how would you define energy security?
So if you look at a lot of Indigenous communities in what's currently called Canada, there's a lot of our communities that, you know, rely on diesel, which is extremely expensive, extremely bad for the environment. Communities who don't have reliable energy, you know, like communities who are literally in their homes freezing during the winter time because they can't access that heat, or communities that in the summertime it's so warm because they don't have access to that energy too. And so it's the cost to it, it's not having access to it, it's being in remote communities and not being able to easily be around power sources as well. And if the power goes out, like here, you know, we have backups, you know, we have crews that come and help us, but in rural and remote communities, they don't have that. And so energy security is making sure that we have clean solutions so that communities always have access to affordable clean energy. And it's crucial, and it's not just like supplying the energy too, it's making those houses energy efficient, you know, doing retrofits and upgrades to ensure that those communities, you know, can call their houses homes and feel comfortable and safe there. Because energy security, in a lot of ways, it plays into, you know, our entire lives. Us recording this podcast is relying on energy right now, you know? And so it means like being able to provide that sense of home and safety to people across what's currently called Canada, but for my work, particularly for Indigenous communities.
Or do you think current practices are sustainable, and how do you think they can become like more sustainable? Like, how would you rate our current practices?
Yeah, like Indigenous communities are definitely leading this change. And I feel like not enough people are paying attention to that. Like, if you look at the network that Indigenous Clean Energy, the organization, has, they have such a huge network, and that's because so many Indigenous peoples are taking this change seriously, like this transition seriously. I encourage people to look up nêhiyâskwew. He's one of the people that I went to COP27 with, and he's phenomenal. And he led like a clean energy project in his community. And he's also looking at things like energy security and educating like our peoples on what that means and how they can even do upgrades in their homes. So like, I would say again, it's so sad we keep saying this, but there needs to be more, there's more work to be done. Right. But if you want to feel inspired, I would look at the Indigenous peoples leading this change and the communities that are doing this, because there are communities that are fully like doing retrofits on all their homes to get them energy efficient. And there are communities that are leading clean energy projects to make sure that they have access to energy in their communities that's safe and is like embodying their traditional teachings as well. So I think Indigenous peoples are definitely leading it and making sure that that's happening in a good way in community, and making sure that they're lobbying with their provincial governments to ensure that that stays the same way and that other communities can do the same. And so I would say there's work to be done. Yeah. It's going to be the quote of this podcast. Yeah. But there's a lot of beautiful work being done too, and a lot that can inspire others. So I would encourage people to look that up. Like, just, there's a map actually, I think, on Indigenous Clean Energy's website where they have pins where all these clean energy or energy efficiency projects are. And it's like, that are led by Indigenous peoples or in partnership with Indigenous peoples. And it's huge. It's all across Canada. And if people look at that, they'll see like there's examples out there. There's real life examples that they can take into account when they're building their own projects or doing the same things or trying to work with Indigenous communities in a better way. So we're doing, in the sense of the space that I'm in with Indigenous communities, we are doing good. And there is work to be done that other people can take part in. But we're doing a lot, and we are leading in that space.
Yeah, so we were mentioning COP27 a lot, but I just want to let the listeners know that COP27 refers to like the 27th conference of the parties. So this is like a meeting where members of countries of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, so UNFCCC for short. So during these COP meetings, representatives from countries around the world come together to discuss and negotiate ways to address the global issue of climate change. So COP27 took place in November 2022. It was hosted in Egypt. And it was expected to focus on implementing agreements made in previous COP meetings, and particularly the Paris Agreement. So finding solutions to mitigate the effects of climate change. So I was reading some articles, and it said it wanted to move from negotiations and just planning, which was the focus of COP26. It was pretty like vague, I think, and there was not a firm plan to achieve what they want to set. So Aubrey attended this conference in Egypt, and my question to you is, did the focus move from negotiation phase to actual implication and to have to achieve this reality, like have it in reality in a sense? Yeah,
I think that a lot of the criticism that COP27 had is that it didn't accomplish what it was supposed to accomplish. And because those conversations are so vague, and because you have so many different countries coming together from different perspectives, it's so hard to push that work forward sometimes, because there's so many people that, you know, that are highly wealthy countries because of oil and gas, or because of the things that are, you know, pushing us in the wrong direction when it comes to climate change. And some people who are focused on that like wealth of it. So COP, I think there was a lot of amazing people at it that were trying to, you know, make sure that we were doing the right work, and especially paying attention to loss and damages. Because like I said, there are countries that contribute so much to climate change, but they don't pay for those consequences. Other countries in at-risk areas pay for those consequences. And that's so unfortunate. And so that's why that loss and damages was a huge part of COP27, to make sure that we are doing our job in, you know, making sure we're making our own changes in each country, but also so that, you know, we're paying for the damages that we do cause, and making sure that we're not being irresponsible and making other places suffer because of what we're doing. And so, yeah, there's a lot more that could have been discussed and committed to make real change. But there were great people there.
I mean, it's hard because, how do you expect to change the world essentially in a couple of days? That's when you just start the conversation, the planning part. It's the implementation part and looking, you have to consider risk factors. Each country, like let's say Canada versus the US, population difference, right? Like you have to consider, there's so much more to than just one person being like, this is my country, this is what we need, blah, 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 blah. And just actually diving into the topics properly, it takes more than just a couple days.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it was overshadowed by like the world events that was occurring during that time. It was like COVID-19, food crisis. I feel like that, like,
and like for me, like I focus on the energy area, of course, but when you look at climate change, you need to look at food sovereignty, you need to look at water, you need to look at housing, you need to look at our youth and our future generations. There's so much to it that it's overwhelming to cover all those topics in such a short amount of time. Yeah. But yeah, we do need to look at it less from like a perspective of like what my country needs and what my country's gonna do better. It needs to be more of like a global effort of what we're all going to do for our next generations. And I think that's like a gap that needs to be filled there. But there was great work done, and there's lots of great people that go there, but
always room for improvement.
For sure, yeah. So I think my focus is a lot more on sustainability and how can we make like our healthcare system more sustainable. I've done like a few courses in sustainability and I've done a few study abroad programs. So I've always really been into how can we make our hospitals more sustainable. And I know that hospitals are institutions which consume a lot of energy. They're actually the highest energy intensity buildings, which are publicly funded. They emit 2.5 times more greenhouse gases than other commercial buildings. And that's not even mentioning how much carbon dioxide it takes to manufacture, transport these medical equipment. So there's a lot of emissions that do come from just a hospital, and they also operate 24/7. So there's a lot of energy demand there. So how do you think we can make our hospitals more sustainable? And do you think that this is even feasible?
I think it has to be. We have to make it feasible if it's not feasible, because we don't have a choice at this point in the world. You know, we need to act urgently and we need to act seriously. So as much as it is overwhelming, don't get me wrong, which can make it seem not feasible, but we need to make it feasible. And a lot of the times too, like it's business, you know, it's companies that we talk about when it comes to this energy transition, or it's housing. But we do need to look at healthcare too, and what that does in the world that we live in. Like we need that, and if we care about that and we care about taking care of our health, then these companies, people, we need to invest in that. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of this has to do with money too. We need to invest in ensuring that our healthcare systems have access to that. They have the funding to make those adjustments too, because a lot of the time when we look at funding for the healthcare system, it does have to go to really important things like equipment and caring for patients. But we also need to have people who are also investing in the space of having that energy transition in those spaces, making sure that they have access to cleaner energy as well. That plays into energy security too, which I'm studying. And that we have to, the onus can't be on the healthcare system to just do that for themselves. It's also for external industries to know what their role is in that space too. So if we're looking at the transport of this equipment, we also need to make our investments in cleaner transportation. So you're looking at, I have a good friend named Darian who's doing work in, working in aviation. And so looking at how we can go cleaner in that space as well. And so that's going to then play into, you know, the offsets that and the different changes that the healthcare system can make too when it comes to that, and not feel like that onus is on them to purchase carbon offsets when they're shipping things to themselves, but instead to make sure that it's clean in the first place, you know, that we're actually making changes first and foremost. And so there's a lot of work to do. I think we need to have that clean energy though. Like there's so much energy there. I work for an organization that also uses a lot of energy. And for us, we take a lot of responsibility in making sure that one day we can look at what that looks like to make our energy sources cleaner as well. And so we need to do that with healthcare, but we can't put the onus just on the healthcare system. It has to be on us, like industry investing in those changes too, because it is overwhelming for sure, but it can be done. It absolutely can be done.
And we're definitely seeing that. Like, I think they are trying to take steps. I'm not sure if you've heard something called the Green Hospital Scorecard. So it's basically a scorecard that was developed by the Ontario Hospital Association, and it's kind of serves as a benchmark to recognize efforts by hospitals in different sectors. So that would be water conservation, waste management, pollution prevention, etc. And each hospital which participates receives like a bronze, silver, or gold status. And then these top performing hospitals receive like a green health award. So that's something I've actually kind of seen. I know the Rocky View Hospital has one. I know AHS partakes in this. So what is your opinion on that? Do you think these kind of little steps are effective?
Absolutely. I think that like it's easy to be a pessimist, pessimistic in this area. Like it's so easy to do that. And sometimes that's overwhelming and that brings on anxiety and brings on this burden. But absolutely little changes are equally as important. And honestly, people don't pay enough attention to waste reduction as well and like different avenues that can go as well. Because it's not just about energy. Like I said, it's about being more efficient in the way that we do things. And so if we're looking at all these like little spaces too, these little things aren't going to get us all the way there, but they are a big part in the grand scheme of things of how we are going to get there. You can't run a mile without training to do smaller aspects first, I'm not going to go straight into it. And so we do need to do those little things. And I think that that's a motivator for some places and in some spaces to get us there. And so I love that. I think that's amazing. And there's like definitely work in all areas to contribute to sustainability. Like I said, mine is in energy, but others might be in different spaces, like looking at waste. And then there's definitely there's beauty in making sure that we take time to appreciate the advancements that we're making too, because it is overwhelming. It can give you so much stress too. And things like that are just as important. It's that we're making the incremental changes, but it's also that we're acting with urgency. And I think that that's the next step is bringing in those changes, but then taking them the step further to make sure that they're actually going to impact it on a large scale.
Right. And I know earlier you mentioned that Indigenous communities are at the forefront of bringing about a lot of like this climate action and climate change. Do you think that Indigenous healthcare as well is doing that? Do you think that they have more sustainable energy sources compared to non-Indigenous communities? And do you see that maybe non-Indigenous communities are catching on to what they're doing?
I think that in some ways, yes. So if you look at Indigenous communities, it's different, because you look at industry and they're focused on profit, or they're focused on what's making them saving the most amount of money, which is also important, so that you can spend it on things, especially in healthcare, that are important when it comes to treatment. But for Indigenous communities too, in every single thing that we do, it has to come back to our culture. It has to come back to our values, our traditions, who we are as a people, our ancestral knowledges. And at the forefront of our knowledges is connectedness with Mother Earth. So in a lot of ways, we're leading in this space because we're leading with our identity. We're leading with our culture. And that comes with making sure that what we do is done in a sustainable way. Because if we're not acting sustainable, how are we expecting the rest of the world to do that, And all we can do is hope that other people are catching on and hopefully feeling inspired by that. And I think a lot of people are. A lot of people change their businesses so that they can partner with Indigenous communities to have those at the forefront. And so we are doing that because we're leading with our hearts, because if we're not doing what we need to do, we're harming our animals, which we hunt then to live off of. And we do that also in a sustainable way. Like you look at the stories of the bison and how we used every single part of it. It did not go to waste. And it's little things like that you don't think play into it, but they do. So you have to look at that traditional teaching, the ancestral knowledge that comes there too. So yes, Indigenous people are doing that, but that's because it's our way of life. It's who we are inherently. And if other people acted in that same spirit, then they would do the same. But I do think people are getting inspired by it, and they are going to do that as well.
Right. And do you think our hospitals are trying to incorporate more Indigenous practices and ways that Indigenous peoples want to be cared for in hospitals? Do you think we have that space currently?
Not at the level we need to. Are you open to it though? I think some are. I would say definitely some are. There's there's always people who are fully for making those changes. There's some that are in the middle, and there's some that very focused on Western science. And so there is interest in, there are people who are having like healing lodges. Like if I look at health, I don't just look at health as like our physical, it's also like our mental. And you look at like healing lodges that exist for people who have been through the correction system, and how that actually creates much better change for people who are inmates than being in these correctional facilities instead, because it promotes healing. It doesn't promote punishment. It promotes healing from what caused you to do that. And so if we look at that in the healthcare system of like within our hospitals, if we can look at holistic healing as well, we can prevent a lot of the reasons that we go into the hospital sometimes too. And so that's why a lot of people too, when they talk about the healthcare system, they're talking about environmental racism, because then we are closer to things that are going to impact our livelihoods, have higher risks of cancer because we're by, places that have oil spills or that are impacting our wildlife that we hunt and then live off of. And so we find ourselves in the hospitals relying on these Western systems and these medicines, when in reality, if we could shift too, there's medicines with our plants that we need to pay attention to. And some places do have that. Some places have ways where we can connect to our bodies and our minds and our spirits. But some are like, here's your prescription and get better, But that's not always the way, there's so many other avenues to take, and some do that in a really great way. And some people don't. They're a lot more pessimistic about opening up their minds to that.
Right. And do you think that's because of a lack of awareness or a lack of open-mindedness? Like, why do you think that is?
I think it's, probably both, probably all of the above, like, because for so many years we've ignored, people have ignored the teachings of Indigenous peoples and the knowledges that we hold, our plant medicines, they've completely disregarded that and moved over to what we've researched for years and what's been in labs, But if we could shift our focus, it's probably way healthier. It's the way that our people lived before, so why not evaluate it, And so it's probably a lack of awareness, that for a long time there's still not education in schools about our plant medicines for the most part. I never learned about it growing up. And my sister just went through education. She didn't learn how to teach that to her students either. And so I think it's a mixture of that awareness. So that plays into our education system as well. And then it is like the lack of open-mindedness too, because even if you do have that knowledge and you see that, some people are going to think, why aren't we just sticking with what we were already doing, what was already working? When in reality, we could shift, and maybe we'd feel better in our bodies too in a lot of ways, because it'd be healing with Mother Earth,
I've seen like a lot of policy making, like let's say like back in the day, go like 5 years back, policy making was the foundation, like results, having something that's observable, tangible was the foundation of making a policy. Mm-hmm. So now that we're as youth or as people who are kind of like, let's say Gen Z, like we have to ask the questions of why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? So we don't just look at facts, cold, hard facts of this is this and this is that, but we look at, but this can make someone feel this way. Mm-hmm. So we add a bit more like empathy. We add a bit more of like that touchy-feely type, And I think like policymakers are essentially more on the older generation.
Yep.
And they don't operate or they don't see the world in that way. So I think like changing policies is something that I guess maybe we might not see a complete change in this generation, but I do think like there are very small changes, and some leaders are actually open to it. Mm-hmm. But I know like some leaders just don't, that's not the way they operate. That's not the way they see policy. And I think policy needs to be a middle balance between let's see the facts, but also like, like how does it make someone feel this way? Or how can we look at healthcare and not just, medicine helps, but, physical activity helps, social services help, having healing groups help, looking at like the prison system and not just looking at they did something bad and so they're put in jail. But it's like you have to also consider, why did they do that?
Yeah.
Was it their like circumstances that led them to that way? Can we help them so that we're not putting so much funding in like all like the jail system and all that stuff, but like we're actually helping people get better and be more productive citizens. Mm-hmm. So it's like that shift. I think we're working to it there still.
As always.
But I think like when you were talking about that, that's like a reflection I had, because I'm like, policy is, even now when we like to evaluate policy or even in business classes, they operate on this like, it's like this like 4 table. I forgot what it's called, but they make like a table and they like to see like the costs and the benefits and the pros and the cons.
Oh, like SWOT.
SWOT, exactly, yeah. So even with SWOT, you're looking at what? Again, results based.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, and like another thing I wanted to ask is like, let's say if we make energy systems and hospitals more cleaner, more sustainable, I think like just in general, like it takes so much money to create, let's say, a technology, a healthcare device, a healthcare technology. And already just to access healthcare is so expensive. I just like, do you see the costs of healthcare rising by implementing more sustainable energy systems and making practices a bit more sustainable? Because already healthcare is very hard to access. It's very expensive. And there's so many issues already in the healthcare system that do you see that they kind of balance it? Like, do I put more money into, let's say, reaching out to communities, making things more inclusive, or do I focus my energy and all my resources on trying to create technology that's more sustainable? Like, do you see a middle balance, or what do you think about that?
I think a lot of people see it that way too, but when we look at, transitioning to cleaner energy sources, the upfront costs, yes, it is quite a bit to look at, and it can be overwhelming to transition to that system. But when it comes to the actual like electrical work, it's not hard to switch over to that. And in the long run, there are tons and tons of studies out there that show that in the long run, the costs of operating facilities when you transition to greener energy are so much lower, because we're not paying for those fossil fuels to, go up, and you're not paying for oil and gas to, be powering us. We're instead, utilizing Mother Earth. We're utilizing, whether it's wind or the sun, or we're using like bioenergy. We're utilizing what we already have, and that's in turn making our costs go down. So if you look at it on a smaller scale, which is sometimes easier to understand, is like if you look at your house, you're paying for energy that comes from your utility, your provincial utility, or whatever you use. In Saskatchewan, it's Sask Power. So we're buying that power from there, which is coming from oil and gas sources, which we have to pay for because they have to pay for that to be extracted and used. But when my house got solar panels, then our energy was coming from, the sun. And that was in turn helping power our house, which lowered our power bill because we didn't have to use as much power from the utility. And we were then instead able to use cleaner energy, which lowered our costs. But also, it kind of felt good as like a person to know that like what you were living on was, something that was cleaner. It was better for the environment around you. And so our costs went down, and then, we saved money that we could then, put into other things that our family was important to us. And if you look at that on a bigger scale in the healthcare systems, if we did that on a large scale for them, it would lower their costs for those operational costs that they could then put into other spaces. So yes, that upfront cost can be overwhelming, but that's where we need investments. That's where we need people to get on board. And when we do that, in the long run, the operational costs of these facilities is going to be much, much lower, that we can then invest those dollars into other places, in holistic healing too, where we can like change our systems, but also build on that. It's not about just relying on Western science or Western knowledges or Indigenous teachings. It's bridging those together. That's what reconciliation is bringing both together, not valuing one over the other, but making sure they're working with one another. And so that's what we need to look at too. It can be overwhelming, but in the long run, it is what's going to be a solution for us. Okay. One of many. Yeah.
Because I know you're talking right now about business, policymakers, and all that, but I know you also talk about holistic in healing and plant medicine and all that. So from your personal standpoint, how can we make healthcare practices more indigenized and inclusive of Indigenous ways of knowing?
Yeah, there's so much opportunity for that, and it's exciting, and I hope more people adopt it. But like for me, like when I have a toothache growing up, my mom and dad would be like, I would have rat root. you know, like you don't hear, I'm not going to go to a doctor and the doctor's going to be like rat root, you know, like they're going to be like, here's some medicine to manage the pain, take an Advil, take a Tylenol, you know, that kind of thing. If I'm going to get like sick, like motion sickness, I'll be like, take a Gravel, you know, but growing up for me, it was actually really cool because my family didn't like rely on that so much. They relied on other ways of doing it. So like for us too, it was about, you know, having that rat root when you had like a sore tooth, you know, making sure that you had that, having certain teas if you had an upset stomach. When COVID came around and we had to take care of our immunity, we had skunk oil, which sounds a bit nasty. It wasn't, I promise, I took it. But we had skunk oil, you know, so we utilized the plants, the animals, what they had. Growing up, I had eczema, like really bad on my arms. And I have, you know, discoloration on my arms now because of it. But what actually ended up healing my eczema, and I haven't had it since I was young, was bear grease. You know, so it's things like that that are really beautiful, and they come from the land, they come from nature, and those can heal us. We need to use them in a right way and appropriately so that we're not extracting more than we need and not disproportionately affecting our other living animals and beings. But there's so much healing power in that, you know, when we rely on that. And from that, I felt better. You know, I wasn't putting things in my body that I felt weren't meant to be there, things that weren't already part of, you know, nature. And so it was really beautiful. I felt better about healing because of it, mentally even. And I think that comes with it too. Like if you look at your gut health even, there is medicine and, you know, pills that you can take and supplements. But there's also sometimes we need to just able to heal our mentality, like our anxiety. And then that in turn, like in yoga, we were talking about yoga before this, I learned how to like breathe so it promotes rest and digest. And it was things like that, you know, that you can do to kind of help your gut health too. So there's so many different avenues that you can take too, that you can take the pills and the medicine that are going to help too. And don't get me wrong, like those are amazing. Those are great in helping too. But also that we're looking at other avenues for the people who want to take those avenues.
Yeah, talking about homemade remedies and stuff. In my culture, we have something called haldi doodh, which is basically turmeric milk, and we drink this when we're sick. So it's like, yes, there's pills, supplements, and all that, but I feel like having these homemade remedies, it feels like, I don't know, I think you have a mental connection to it, so it's like a help to, I don't know how to say it.
It's funny, Energy, you mentioned it, because I was actually just thinking that.
I was also thinking that.
My dad forces me to like drink turmeric and milk, and I'm like, what is this helping me with? Like, what is turmeric gonna do? But like, it helps with inflammation. And it's a natural thing. Turmeric helps with inflammation. And on the plus side, turmeric plus milk is it's like this. It's sweet. It's actually really good. So just have it on the regular, honestly. Yeah. It makes your teeth a little yellow. Right?
I think too, like with holistic healing, is it's not just, it's really beautiful in a lot of ways too, because it's not just reactive. Like once you get an infection, it's about being preventative of like what you can get to, like making sure you're taking care of your body, making sure you're getting the right amount of supplements, making sure that you're eating properly, you know what your plant medicines are if they come up, so you can address them right away instead of it getting further to turn into something like an infection. And so there's a lot of potential there, and I think that like we've all said, it connects our mind to it too, you know, it's a whole body thing. Like our healing is a whole body thing. It's not just, you know, I hurt my arm, so I gotta help my arm, you know, it's like I gotta really connect there, you know. And I think that's where like real healing comes from, because a lot of times when you're healing from sicknesses, even like there's trauma in that, and if you can do that in a way that protects your mental health too, that's so important.
You know, you kind of talked about how in the healthcare system you've experienced racism. Mm-hmm. You've seen your grandparents, your sister, your parents. How, like, for you personally, how did that make you feel? Because like I know sometimes when I go to certain parts of Calgary, and this was when I was really young, I would say I was probably in grade 5, 10 years old. I'm walking down the aisles of Superstore in the cereal aisle, and I felt out of place. And I've been in Calgary since I was 6, you know, so why am I out of place in this special quadrant versus when I go back to my quadrant, I'm like, this is home. Like, I feel safe here. I can walk in any store and feel like, okay, like I'm welcomed here. But I walked into that store, walking down the grocery aisle at 10 years old, feeling like, why are people looking at me weirdly? Why do I feel weird? You know? So kind of just how you what was the first time kind of reflecting on it too? Because I reflected on this a couple years back when I kind of like actually made note of, oh shoot, like that actually happened, you know?
Yeah. And it's sad because it's like people think it's like just a one-off, like that happens and you deal with it and you're mad for a minute and it's gone. It's not. It stays with you literally forever. And so it's hard. Like my mom is like a principal in high schools, and my dad is an electrician, and you know, my sister's in education and social work, my brother's in school, post-secondary. I'm in this like clean energy space and corporate social responsibility space. And for us, like we do really well for ourselves. Like we're really proud of where we are. We're very connected to our culture, but that comes with so much too. And so like sometimes you get it from both sides. I found growing up sometimes, because I grew up in the city. I didn't get to grow up in my community. My parents wanted to raise us in Saskatoon because that was where their work was. That's where we could go to school. And so for us, sometimes like we weren't, you know, Indigenous enough for our First Nations friends, and we were too Indigenous for the people who weren't. And so growing up, like I'd be in elementary school and kids, like young kids, like I was in like grade 4, would be like, go back to residential schools. Or like it's heartbreaking. Or I'd watch us get followed in stores. Or I went to a doctor once, and the doctor did not believe I was sick. I have no idea why. Would not believe I was sick, and chalked it up to that they thought I got abused at home, which I did not. I came from the most loving home. I love my parents. Like I love my whole family. And it's disheartening. Like you carry that with you, and then that in turn creates a lot of distrust in the world. So like even today, like I'll go like walk around a mall, or I'll go grocery shopping, and I'll be like, is this person following me because they're just making a loop, or are they following me because of the color of my skin, or are they just following me because they think I'm going to steal because of these stereotypes that they have? And so it's tough. And like for me, even like like First Nations people a lot of time are labeled incorrectly as, you know, alcoholics. So I would go out and have a drink with my friends, and then some racist person would make a comment about how, you know, all your people are like that, you know, and you carry that with you in so many spaces. So you're not able to trust anybody. And it's tough. It's really hard because as a result of that hate you get outside of your communities, there's then hate built up in your community, and there's that lateral violence aspect of it too. And so it's really, really difficult. And yeah, like I think I've always known it, and it's sad because like you can be like a little kid and realize it, but you can't put a name to it. You can't call it racism. You can't call it discrimination yet, but you know it's there. You know what it is, and it still exists to this day heavily. Like there's not an experience I have where I don't face it, sadly enough. The same with many people of color. And it's hard because people aren't willing to educate themselves. And that's what's the most frustrating part. Like there's just some people who, my dad always tells me, like, especially being in like this advocacy space, I get so frustrated and worn down, and I get such bad anxiety. And my dad's like, you can't teach people who don't want to learn. Yeah. And he would always tell me that. And he'd be like, you can't get frustrated by that stuff. And then I'd talk to my mom and I'd be like, how? Don't you let it bug you? And she's like, it's when you deal with it your whole life, like you're used to it. And that's just disheartening. And to watch my grandpa, who has survived so much, go through what he went through, my mushum, who passed away with what he had faced in life, my dad, who's like went to day schools, a survivor of day schools, it's sad. And there's still people who don't tell their stories, and that's because it was so bad, and people don't listen to that. They don't pay attention to that. Or like when those burials were found, when the grounds were searched, people would be like, oh, that was just because there's illness. There weren't cemeteries at other schools. So why was there at Indigenous schools? And they're not schools either. I hate calling them schools, but it's a result of what's happened for years, and we still face it today, and it's tough. So like for me, because of what I faced when I went to go see a doctor, and them assuming I came from an abusive household just because of my last name and the color of my skin, like they don't even have to look at me. They'll see Pewapisconias and automatically judge me, and I can see it on their faces. Or one time I was driving my partner home a long time ago, and we were pulled over, and I was totally fine. I was tired. I was in my pajamas. I was ready to go to bed. And he was totally nice to me, totally friendly to me. It was dark. And then he saw my license. He saw Pewapisconias. And he made me get out of my car. He pushed me against my car. My hands were behind my back. I had to do a breathalyzer. I had to walk the line. And it was really, really tough. Like, it was not a fun experience because I knew that the second he saw my name, even because it was dark and he couldn't tell that, maybe he couldn't tell right off the bat that I was Indigenous, the second he saw my last name, it was a totally different way I was treated. And I still carry that with me. I don't trust cops because of that. I don't trust doctors because of what they said to my parents that day. I tore my meniscus and they didn't believe that my meniscus was actually torn and I was like in high school. And so it was just, you lose trust in the systems really fast that way. And it's really hard.
And I feel like once you lose trust, like it's with anything, once you lose it, it's very hard to gain it, especially because when you're talking to, let's say, your family doctor and they're not treating you the way you want to be treated, it's so hard to find another family doctor. Mm-hmm. And that family doctor might do the same thing. So now you have two bad experiences. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you just give up because you're like, I don't want to try.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. Like, why am I putting so much effort into taking care of my health or taking care of this or that when there are people there who are specialized in also helping me with that? Mm-hmm. But they're not. And it's like, you can't yes, you can control your health, but you have your limits too.
Yeah.
You can't prescribe yourself medication.
No.
Right? Like, you have to go see a specialist if you have something. Like, you can't just do stuff on your own. So it's like hard to like find that middle balance. Like, I work with this organization and basically her chiropractor, she's open with her story. Mm-hmm. And her chiropractor, when she said that, I don't want dry needling, like, don't give me dry needling. What did he do? He put the dry needle in her when she wasn't even ready for it. And this was her chiro that she's had since she was a child. Mm-hmm. So she's like, I don't know why this changed, know? And she was telling me, and she's like, I don't like going to the doctors anymore. I hate doing this. She's like, I don't like going to my physio. She's like, and because of the way that they've treated her and just, she was put on AISH after, she's like, now I'm practically homeless. And just like how one situation can just a domino effect into like bad things.
Yeah.
Not even good things, just bad things for her. So like, I can see like how once you lose trust, it's just so hard to even be like, you know what, I want to try it again because you have no effort left in you to try again. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. It plays into everything else. And I watched my sister go through it. Like, she's a type 1 diabetic and she's dealt with it her whole life, like with people doubting her or not believing what she's saying or assuming she just wants a certain prescription, which is ridiculous. Just because of like what she looks like, or because they honestly they don't have respect for you sometimes if you have like a certain skin color, and it's so disheartening. Like, they just assume these oversimplified stereotypes of so many people. And I think that there needs to be more training in that space, because if we're taught from a young age that these are the systems that are going to help us, but you're not going to teach those systems how to actually help us and help all people, that you're just going to keep creating those toxic cycles in these people's lives and then blame us for the reason we get into those spaces sometimes. So there's a lot of work to be done, as with anything. Yeah.
No, it's definitely disappointing that we're hearing stories like this and it's 2023. Like, yeah. I'm disappointed, but I see it in the hospital. I volunteer in emergency, so I definitely see experiences and things like that. I've faced discrimination. Mm-hmm. I've had my own experiences, so it's very disappointing. But that's why we have this platform where we can talk about these experiences and criticize our system. And when we do have these open conversations, we are able to bring about change, and we're able to let the larger community know that these problems still exist. These are not just, past problems. We're still facing them. We're going through them. And that comes back to our own campus community. How do you think our students can become more aware of certain issues, whether that's discrimination, whether that's climate change, whether that's energy sources? We've talked about so many different issues today. Yeah. What do you think our youth need to do?
I think that in a lot of ways, like, a lot of people come from very privileged spaces. The people who have a lot of the say come from very privileged spaces sometimes. And so what they need to do is really just, it sounds so simple, but it really isn't. And I think this is where I've had the most of my troubles, is that they don't listen properly. You know, like I'll tell people, like I was on this student group once and I was a VP of charity at the time. And I was telling one of the people on the executive, I was like, I am facing discrimination from this person. You know, this person I can see what they're doing, but they're doing it in such a strategic way where there's no one else around, or they'll say it they'll use certain words that I can't actually pinpoint to another person how they are being racist, or how they are being rude or dismissive, because they're so strategic about it. And so then in turn, because I couldn't physically put it on paper, or like we said, I couldn't have those facts of this, and this, and there wasn't witnesses, I couldn't prove to this person in any way that what was happening was wrong. And because of that person didn't believe me. They weren't listening to what I was saying. They weren't trusting my lived experiences. And so I think what we need to do is we need to listen. We need to know that if that person feels that they're feeling that discrimination, that racism, those barriers, they're not just saying that to say that. They're saying that because they unfortunately usually know exactly what that feels like, exactly what that means, even if that person's being strategic and not saying it in a certain way or doing things in a certain space. We need to listen better. We need to trust, and we need to believe the people who bring these stories forward, because we do not do that nearly enough. We place doubt on their own minds. Like I had this person place doubt on my mind that this was even happening. And looking back on it, it was completely wrong. And it's something that I still like look back on and I'm like, oh, now I feel weird ever trusting like leadership, you know? And so we just need to be more active listeners, and we need to trust that when somebody knows something's wrong, that is wrong. Even if that's not from our own experience, we have to trust that person knows what that experience is for them, and stay true to that and really hold people accountable.
I like how you said their experience, like their own experience from them, right? Like you have to trust what someone's going through, even if you've never gone through it, they might be going through it. And even if you have, like we say, you know, there's individual differences. The weight that we put on certain things can be different, too, right? And the way that certain things that we've gone through in our past, our traumas and stuff, that can lead us to, even if you've gone through the same thing, to react to it differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up here, because we've had a beautiful conversation, I feel very, very inspired today. You're so powerful, you're very inspirational, and we're so glad to have you on our podcast today. But before we wrap up this episode, I would like to ask you one more question. If you could leave our listeners with one main idea or takeaway for today, what would that be?
I think the main thing would be to, build kinship with Indigenous peoples. Like I think what we've had in this conversation is so cool, like as people who come from, different spaces, backgrounds, teachings. And like even before we started recording, we had really beautiful conversations and we were finding connections throughout this whole podcast. And like I feel like a deeper relationship with all of you. And I feel like it's something that's like, it's true. There's reciprocity here. There's so much trust here. Like I don't tell like some of the stories that I just told to any like most people. And so I think like build true kinships like with people, because like that's what's gonna actually like be our solution out of a lot of the troubles that we have. It's that we don't build those deeper connections. We do it from a transactional perspective, not from an interconnectedness perspective. And so for that, I think if we're gonna build real change in healthcare or in sustainability and climate action, it's gonna be through building meaningful relationships and seeing the beauty in our differences and how those can come together. I think that would be the primary thing, and not to take that lightly. Because if we don't do that, we're going to just be stuck in the same cycle of I'm doing this, you're doing that, but they're not coming together.
Yeah. I feel like we say that a lot, that like there's beauty in differences, but I feel like it's just something that we like just say, but we never actually sit back and reflect on that statement.
Yeah.
Like what is beauty in difference, So that's like something that like I just like in papers we write it, we say it to people to prove a point, but like I feel like we never actually reflect on what it means for me or what it means for you, what it means in a space, in a system. So it's kind of, the reflection piece I think like is also needed too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Self-awareness is key as well. Like we all contribute sometimes to these spaces that are toxic, and we need to know what our role is in that and how we can change that.
I agree. But no, thank you so much, Aubrey, for coming. I know you came all the way down from Saskatoon. Thank you so much. And it was really nice seeing you again and connecting with you and just learning and hearing your stories and just learning a little bit more about like the kind of energy field. That's something that I'm very brand new to. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of just, even COP Y20, you know, I saw it online, but just like truly knowing someone who went there and just hearing your stories was really nice. Thank you.
We want to thank CJSW, the Indigenous Global and Local Health Office, Grandmother's Lodge, the UCreate team, and our editor, Atia, for helping us with this podcast. Keep a lookout for the next episodes, and until then, stay warm.